Hello, BookTube. Yesterday, I saw a wonderful video from Rammel Broadcasting. Don't know if you know his channel. I'll leave a link to it down below. You should go and subscribe. Always thought-provoking, really energetic content, very friendly content. And he did a video recently, his latest video, I believe, on a perennially fascinating subject. A subject that I love to talk about, that I love to talk about with you, that we have a lot of fun poking fun at each other about. It's just great. And it is the age-old subject of movies adapted from books. Just fantastic stuff. Always fun to hash that back and forth, even though I, of course, want to preface this video, as I preface all videos, by mentioning the obvious fact that I am always right. Steve is always right. But nevertheless, Rammel Broadcasting wants to give you 5 times that the movie was better than the book. Or movie, in here, movie we'll use that for the thing you go and sit at the theater, but also an adaptation on cable. Since, thanks to the pandemic, that a lot of people now watch that stuff and don't go to movie theaters anymore. And he offers his video almost reluctantly. 5 times where the movie was actually better than the book, which, if that's true, I might be reading in that reluctance, but if that's true, that certainly contravenes what I say, which is that the movie or the video adaptation of a book is almost always better than the book. It's not that that once in a while, very rarely, it's better. It's almost always better. For a whole bunch of reasons that we'll probably get into in the course of this video. And Rammel Broadcasting starts off his video, before he gets to his 5, he wants to issue a warning. He wants to give you a warning. And I don't know what you're going to think about it. He mentions one book adaptation in particular, Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Stephen King's novel The Shining. And he says, these videos like this, where someone makes a video about how the book was better than the movie or the movie was better than the book, that if you're watching a video like that and the person says that the movie of The Shining was better than the book, you should be very suspicious of them, because they're clearly wrong. So Rammel Broadcasting starts off right away by making me assume that his entire list is going to be pure Stephen King fanboy dude bro nonsense, because of course the movie version of The Shining is better than Stephen King's novel. I hate to say that because Kubrick is a terrible director, but the movie version is better than the novel for one very simple reason. It doesn't have any of King's atrocious prose. It doesn't have any of that. Movies can't have any of that unless you're getting a lot of voiceover. But will his list go on to be standard dude bro fare? No, it will not. I had a number of surprises. Number 1 being Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, which Dick is a worshipped author among the kind of people who also worship Stephen King. He is worshipped by them, and yet Rammel Broadcasting, first out of his gate, is that Ridley Scott's 1982 movie of Blade Runner is better than the book, and he's entirely right. Not that I would say so. I think that Rammel Broadcasting says that Philip K. Dick is his favorite author. So we're going to part ways there, because Dick isn't very good. I think he's better after this summer and a reread of his. I think he's better than I originally thought, but he's not very good. He's not as bad as King, but then who is? but he's not good as a writer. Pound for pound, he's incredibly self-indulgent. His books are virtually formless. And again, like I said with The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which mercifully does not come up on Rammel Broadcasting's list and won't come up on mine. But like I said about Cormac McCarthy's novel, The Road, if you are reduced under heavy criticism of what the book is to saying, well, books don't have to be good, they don't have to make sense, well, then you've already lost, whether you think you have or not. If you're saying a book doesn't have to make sense, okay, the author, no author would ever want to be defended that way. And so when I say that Blade Runner at least made some kind of sense, whereas Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is just the author indulging himself 6 or 7 different directions with no coherence at all, if you are reduced in defending the book to saying, well, books don't need coherence, okay, great, thanks, but he doesn't do that. He ranks Blade Runner as better than the book. He's entirely right. Then his choice number 2, very, very interesting. He picks David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas. A very ambitious, multi-layered novel that I'm not sure I've got to the bottom of. David Mitchell is one of those authors where I'm not sure I've got to the bottom of any of his books, even though there are a couple of them that I really, really like. Cloud Atlas is not one of those, but Rammel Broadcasting says that the 2012 adaptation of Cloud Atlas with Tom Hanks is better than the book. And I can almost see that. It's certainly, you get to the heart of the gist of the book much easier. And there's a lot less in the way of, look at me, Ma, look at how clever I am, rhetorical three-card Monty. I wonder, in this case, what you think. Actually, I wonder what you think about all of these, but go and watch his video. See what you think. Leave him a comment, agreeing or disagreeing with him. When you make a video like this, you want a lot of response from the people you're making it for. But did you like the 2012 adaptation of Cloud Atlas? I found that fascinating. Even more fascinating is his third choice, which came out of left field for me. Hellraiser. The 1987 movie directed by Clive Barker. From his Hellbound Heart, his little short story, The Hellbound Heart. He makes a movie out of that. And Rammel Broadcasting says that Hellraiser is much better. And that's, I'd never thought about that before, but that's kind of weird to me. I have a bit of a connection to, well, to something here, either the book or the movie or the author. I have a bit of a connection here that makes me feel a little bit disloyal to say, but considering that Clive Barker also directed the movie, I think it's probably true that Hellraiser is better. It's certainly more effective. But Clive Barker, as an author, has written a lot more effective stuff than Hellbound Heart. So I'm inclined to agree here. Imagine a list that starts off praising Stephen King, and I'm agreeing with most of what's on it. That's incredible. And the same thing is true with the next one. His number 4 is Starship Troopers, 1987, Paul Verhoeven, which he says is better than the book it's adapted from, which is Robert Heinlein's novel. And he's entirely right. He's entirely right. Starship Troopers is only barely a novel. It's a patchwork quilt of a whole bunch of different things in different tenors and not particularly well done. Again, even Heinlein wrote better stuff than Starship Troopers, whereas Verhoeven transforms it into a masterpiece. No matter where you stand on the question of Starship Troopers, the movie, is it pro-fascism or is it anti-fascism? No matter where you stand on that divide, it's still an incredible movie. It is effortlessly, narratively superior to the book it's drawn from. And then Rammel Broadcasting finishes up his list with another genuine surprise. I didn't see Hellraiser coming. And he finishes up with Children of Men. The 2006 movie, the 2006 adaptation of the P.D. James book, Children of Men. Which he calls an amazingly good dystopian novel. I had never thought about it in these terms at all. I guess I'd been thinking about it in closet terms of just somehow part of P.D. James's body of work. But he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. Children of Men is a terrible novel. Not terrible. This author couldn't write a terrible novel, but it's obvious what she's trying to do in Children of Men, and it doesn't work. And it has nothing to do with literature. It has nothing to do with the book. She's trying to cross over. Which some authors can do. Margaret Atwood could do it. And it's mainly just luck. Children of Men as a book is clunky and weird and preachy and oddly out of narrative tone with anything else this author wrote. Whereas Children of Men, the movie, is tremendously effective. It is tremendously good. It hits all the beats that the novel misses. So there you go. I start off with a warning that automatically made me think I was going to disagree with everything on this list because Rammel Broadcasting is so woefully, woefully wrong about Stephen King's novel, The Shining. But we all get to be wrong about something, don't we? Except me. But naturally, when I watched his video, I wanted to make one of my own. I've made many videos like this where I talk about all the movies and the video productions, all of them that were so much better than the book. So I thought I'd go through a brief list. I'll do 5 of my own. And I'll try not to duplicate too much all the things that I have said. Start with 1985. Rammel Broadcasting started in the 1980s, so I will as well. He started in 82. I'll start in 85. With John Irvin's adaptation of Russell Hoban's Turtle Diary. A quiet little movie from a quiet little book about 2 quiet little people who may or may not find love while studying and enthusing and trying to protect a quiet little animal. It's Glenda Jackson and Ben Kingsley. I really don't think that either one of them did more subtle performances than what's in this movie anywhere in their careers. The movie is not known anymore. The book is not known. I don't think in America anyway. Russell Hoban, I don't think, is in print at all. But Turtle Diary is superior. Whatever he was trying to do in Turtle Diary, and I think I know what he was trying to do, he's not the right author for it. And he doesn't carry it off. It's only effective in a couple of scenes. Whereas the movie is effective all through. Then we can move on to, this is one that I mentioned many, many times before. This is Boris Sagal. I might as well mention it again because I cannot recommend it strongly enough. And that is 1981's Masada, the miniseries Masada, starring Peter O'Toole as the luckless Roman general who is tasked with taking the fortress of Masada, and Peter Strauss as the leader of the Jewish zealots who are holed up on top of that mountain. Legendarily an untakeable place, but the Romans have to take it, and there is a way to do that. It just involves literally moving heaven and earth, literally building a mountain where there was not one before. And it's adapted from a novel by Ernest K. Gann, who wrote Fate is the Hunter, his great nonfiction book, Fate is the Hunter. He wrote a book called The Antagonist, which is about this. It's the antagonism between Elazar ben Yair up on the mountain and Flavius Silva down on the plain. And what that means, and whether or not they will come to know each other, and who is right and who is wrong. And the novel is leaden. It's plodding and leaden. I have all the goodwill in the world for Ernest K. Gann. I have known countless amateur pilots who had read and almost memorized Fate is the Hunter, which is all about flying. I know of hundreds and hundreds of little private or public hangars all across the United States that have technical manuals and signal books and notebooks, but the one piece of creative work of literature that they have is Fate is the Hunter. So I don't rule it out. The Antagonist has some interesting scenes to it. So does its sequel. But nothing like Masada. Masada is beautiful, just wonderful, all the way from beginning to end. It's a long time. It's a long period. Peter O'Toole most certainly should have won an Emmy for that miniseries, and I somehow did not. So that's one that I mentioned many times before. Masada is just handily better than the book it's adapted from. And you might think, okay, maybe so, but it's a little unfair because it's so long. I might point out that reading a novel, the audiobook of a novel, typically takes a long time. A lot longer than it takes to read with your eyes. But we'll move on to my number 3, which is from 2022, and is an adaptation of a book that isn't very good. It's Noah Baumbach's adaptation of White Noise by Don DeLillo. The book, as I mentioned in a video just yesterday, the book is only patchily effective. There are good scenes. There are mostly scenes that aren't bad. I wanted to stress in yesterday's video, I'll stress again today, Don DeLillo is not a bad writer. It's just, he's washy, he's flaccid, he shows up on the page, but he doesn't do much more than that most of the time. And that has only gotten worse as he has grown into this gray-haired elder statesman role where, unfortunately, this most self-doubting of all authors has come to think that what his fans have been telling him for 30 years is true, which is that anything that comes into his mind is probably a ponderable thought. That's not true. That's not true at all. It takes a lot more than just showing up to be an author. And I don't think that Don DeLillo has done more than just show up in quite some time as an author. And that is mostly true of White Noise. But the 2022 movie version is great. Just great. It's electric in a way that almost nothing that DeLillo wrote is ever electric. So I'll put that on there. White Noise is a more contemporary pick. Then for my number 4, I'm going to pick something far, far from contemporary. I'm going to pick Ben-Hur by Lew Wallace from 1880. Lew Wallace went through the American Civil War and then went back to civilian life and eventually wrote a book that sold unbelievable truckloads of copies. It's 1888. It's more than a century ago. I don't expect any of you to really know this, but it sold more copies than It was a huge, huge success. And it has been adapted to the screen many, 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 many times. And you might remember only the gigantic cast of thousands mega Hollywood epic with Charlton Heston. As well you should. But Ben-Hur, that movie was not the first adaptation of Ben-Hur. Ben-Hur had been adapted many times before that, and has been adapted since, unfortunately. It shouldn't be. When you have a Hollywood extravaganza like that, Ben-Hur, you don't adapt it again. You find something else to adapt. What are you going to do? You're going to ask somebody else to be Charlton Heston? They're all going to look like children. And sure enough, in the one subsequent Ben-Hur movie adaptation that I can think of, the actor who plays Judah Ben-Hur, anyone who has seen that Charlton Heston movie, the new adaptation, the actor will strike you as a little boy, which is not what you want. He'll strike you as a little boy. You'll keep waiting for an adult to show up on the screen. So when it comes to Ben-Hur, not only has it had a great adaptation, it's had a bunch of bad adaptations, but it's had a great adaptation, and it's also a lousy book, which almost no critics that I know of said at the time. It's a lousy book. Stodgy, preachy, endless, just an endless trek through the desert. It's not a good book. It wouldn't take much to improve it. But that's not true for number 5. Number 5 on my list, the original source, the original text, is Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is great. There's nothing wrong with Bram Stoker's Dracula, so it's got everything. And it's been adapted a million times as well. And one of the times that it was unofficially adapted, it was plagiarized, but I think it counts for a list like this, was Nosferatu. And I watched of course, no movie version of Dracula is going to be better than the original. Bram Stoker knew what he was doing. He wrote a book that cannot be captured on film. And anything that you do, any version of it that you do on film will not be as good. But that's not true for Nosferatu. That's not true for the movie Nosferatu. And there's a new Nosferatu that Robert Eggers is directing that I don't think it's out yet. I watched a screener of it. It stars Bill Skarsgård, who is at the top of my list for Boy Kills World. I was gonna watch it anyway. I'm not sure what I'll think of his remake of The Crow. It's a little bit of Hollywood scandal that I was never all that enamored of the original version of The Crow. I didn't think it was the coolest thing in the world. I don't think The Property is the coolest thing in the world. But even so, I don't know. I don't know. I again think that maybe you don't adapt The Crow again. But it stars Bill Skarsgård. Also stars Nicholas Hoult, who seems not to be able to get away from Dracula because he did Renfield with Nicolas Cage as Dracula. he did that TV series, and now he's doing Nosferatu. And the parts of it that I have seen are really, really good, really, really creepy and good and visually arresting in a way that the original Nosferatu movie was not. Even though some fans of creaky old black and white movies will probably say that it is. So that's my list. Nosferatu, which I am not saying is better than Dracula, but it's as a movie, it's better than the original movie anyway. The original movie of Nosferatu. And then Ben-Hur in any adaptation, even a bad one, is going to be better than the book. And then White Noise, which in 2022 got a better adaptation than it is a book. And then The Mighty Masada, as perfect a realization of Ernest K. Gohn's stodgy novel as is possible to imagine. And then Turtle Diary, a lovely little movie that I thought was worth a mention. Now, in his video, Rammel Broadcasting has an honorable mention. I thought I would make an honorable mention as well. And I'm going to try not to have the brief mention of an honorable mention be longer and louder and more ranty than the entire rest of the video. And my honorable mention here will go, of course, to The Rings of Power, the second season of Amazon's Rings of Power. And I will mention, this will be an honorable mention in reverse, of course, much like Dracula and Nosferatu, because I can't help, when it comes to the subject of adapting original books or written material to a screen, I don't know if it's an honorable mention, because it's the reverse of an honorable mention, because The Rings of Power is so awful. It is just so awful. And this second season is, it's, if anything, worse than the first. And the first was an abomination. The first was a desecration of the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. It wasn't just a bad adaptation. It was a desecration. It was the showrunners saying, the original stuff by this Tolkien guy stinks. All of it stinks. We hate it. So we're going to travesty it and also mock it along the way. We're going to change everything about it, and we're going to say that our changes are better, that our changes are the novel that Tolkien would have written. And I said at the time that when season 1 was over of Rings of Power, first of all, I was hoping, like so many other people were hoping, that Amazon would just eat the $1 billion that they spent and not do any more of it. It was universally hated. But if that weren't going to happen, I said at the time, the only way you could have a second season of Rings of Power would be to scrap the first season, universally declare that it never happened, and certainly that none of it is canon, and just start over. Make season 2 the first season. If you want to tell the story of the downfall of Numenor at the hands of Anatar, the giver of gifts, go right ahead. But you can't reference what you did in the first season. You have to just get rid of it completely and carry none of it forward. And when the showrunners for the first season of Rings of Power were castigated, left, right, and center, everyone hated this show. And audiences left it in droves. They watched it, and then they watched the first couple of episodes and realized, okay, this isn't Tolkien, and also this is really bad. The costumes are rubber, so I'm not going to watch anymore. Gigantic, off-the-cliff drop in viewership. When the showrunners saw that, they got in front of cameras, went online, and lied their faces off. They said, we've listened to the fans. We will make a more lore-accurate version for season 2. I think you're really going to like the changes that we make. That was never going to happen. That was always a bald-faced lie. The more hatred their adaptation, I shouldn't call it an adaptation, their Rings of Power fan fiction got, the prouder they were of it, because it meant they were pissing off the right people. The more anger, the more resentment their show generated, the more they thought they were on track, and it clearly shows in season 2. When I'm making a movie about adaptations of written material, books, in this case, the appendices to The Lord of the Rings or whatnot, into a visual adaptation of some kind, in this case, a series instead of a movie, I wanted to issue my own warning the same way that Rammel Broadcasting did. If you hear anyone say that they're really enjoying the Rings of Power, distrust them. They are not a Tolkien fan. No matter what else you can say about them, they are not a Tolkien fan. Instead, almost certainly, they are a fan of the Twitter politics sloganeering that is being done in Rings of Power, and that is going to be done for 3 more seasons. Let's get that fantasy right out of our minds. Amazon is not going to stop making this. They're going to make this all the way to the end. And when this generation of fans dies off, a new generation of fans might find this and actually embrace it. As anti-Tolkien, as a correction of Tolkien, I have no idea what they'll do. But in the meantime, I can issue the same honorable mention warning that Rammel Broadcasting did. Don't trust anybody who tells you that this show is good, especially if you haven't read Tolkien, and so you don't know any better. And so you think, well, I haven't read the Silmarillion. I haven't studied the appendices or anything like that to the Silmarillion. I watched the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies, and this seems a lot like that. Yeah, it's supposed to seem a lot like that. But those were loyal and reverential to the source material, and these are not. And if you haven't read the source material and you're hearing a whole bunch of people, maybe, I think mostly online you'll be hearing people saying what I'm saying, but if you come across somebody saying, no, this is really good, they're wrong, and you should be distrustful of them. Anyway, I want to cut off the rant before it swallows the video. So there you go. There's Rammel Broadcasting's 5 choices. Do you agree with his 5 choices? Particularly interested in Hellraiser and Children of Men. Particularly interested in those, and also here are 5 of mine. Now, if you watch this channel for any length of time, you know I could go on forever like this. Nosferatu is a little bit of a wobbly choice, but the others, Ben-Hur, Masada, I'm fairly certain on. I wonder if any of you have seen White Noise, the movie White Noise, and what you think of it. And if any of you have seen Turtle Diary, I would love to know if you think that it is superior to the book. If there's anybody out there who's actually read the book and seen the movie, that would be wonderful to hear. And do what Rammel Broadcasting's viewers in his video. You should go and watch his video. They are appending all sorts of suggestions in his comments field. Feel free to do that to me as well. I, of course, always want to know what you think about this subject, this wonderful subject. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.